Okay, looks like the sun stuck around today with no rain, which is good, I suppose. And with that in mind, what did I read today? It looks like today there was a lot of news about people who are getting charged for flying micro-drones here in Canada. It's just a matter of time, huh? This one here says 2 charged for flying drones over Rogers Centre during Blue Jays games. So more than once anyways, according to this. It says Toronto police say 2 people have been fined and charged for flying drones over the Rogers Centre during the Blue Jays postseason baseball game. Police say the charges were laid under Canadian aviation regulations. So that's kind of interesting, as in a lot of cases, for example, it seems like this is never even a factor in terms of, let's just say, charging people, or even if it deals with, let's just say, misuse from officials and so forth. It says police say they used specialized drone detection technology to spot and intercept 3 unauthorized drone flights over the stadium during the games on Saturday and Sunday. Police say the 2 people were allegedly flying, quote, micro-drones weighing less than 249 grams. The Rogers Centre drone policy says the stadium is within the nearby Billy Bishop Toronto City Airport's no-fly zone. So it's kind of interesting how they specifically mentioned that it's around Toronto City's airport no-fly zone, but at the same time, you could still technically get permission in various places. That doesn't actually stop you from flying it as long as you have everything set and so forth, or at the same time, with the micro drones, it's actually still supposed to be, in a lot of cases, based on, let's just say, flying it safe and so forth. But as you know, recently, they introduced all those new rules of things like, quote, advertised events. So technically, I guess you could say they are breaking the law in that regards. Funny enough, actually, this wasn't the first time I read news about this. If you guys remember way back a few years ago, there were some people in Alberta where the micro drone laws, they were more lax during that time too, before all these changes. And those guys were actually apprehended by the police and so forth for them flying a drone. Whereas in that case, it seems like it dealt with something really political in general, like the party involved. But again, this isn't the first time something like this has happened here. And do you think, for example, this is okay in this situation? I mean, if they are flying, let's just say right within the stadium area, for example, where the games are held, it's kind of like what I said the other day, just take care of it overall. But in my opinion, all these over-the-top rules and so forth for flying, let's just say, toy drones in general, they're kind of crazy when you think about it. I mean, it's like saying just because you have pedestrians or cyclists who at times go into areas they shouldn't, like in events like this, you don't need laws afterwards saying, okay, that's it, we need to ban, I don't know, bicycles, whatever, 5 kilometers away from event areas. I mean, that'd be crazy, correct? That is kind of interesting, I thought, on how they're specifically emphasizing micro drone in this story, because usually they'll just say drone and we're left wondering what exactly it is that they were flying. Now I could see from one angle where, because there's rule changes and so forth, it's a bigger deal, so maybe that will be pushed more in the mainstream media. But it makes me wonder too, because with that big story, as you guys know, like a BC Ostrich farm, where the accusation is the RCMP used their drone, which injured, for example, those ostriches, and one of them actually died. And then there's all that news about them closing off the airspace. Doesn't seem like it's for safety reasons, but because they don't want people to actually see something, for example. Like, that's the accusation if they're flying things like drones. So it makes you wonder if this will actually bring more attention to that. Whereas before, the mass majority would have read a story like this and say, oh yeah, it makes perfect sense. Those rules, for example, ban them here and there. But you can see with bigger stories like that ostrich one now, how it affects everything in general. So it makes you wonder, will people actually think more because of situations like that? And so that thought around the world with drones, apparently Taiwan is going up in arms where they want to do more in terms of anti-drone measures, according to this anyways. This one here says, Taiwan says anti-drone measures will be a top priority in defense against China. There's still that viral video and stuff that went around before, if you guys remember, where allegedly anyways, it was a quote, drone that flew around the area there in Taiwan, and they didn't have anything to deal with it, and there was guards trying to throw rocks at it. It says Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense issued a report saying it is training soldiers to shoot down drones and actively looking to procure new anti-drone weapon systems, which comes in response to Chinese drone incursions. The report released Thursday said Taiwan has developed a strategy to deal with the Chinese drone incursions by identifying and shooting them down as they approach. Defense Ministry spokesperson Major General Sun Lifang said Taiwan is continuing efforts to identify and use effective anti-drone systems in response to China. Can you imagine that in the future, for example, where if there's a drone that flies around an event and so forth, they'll just, quote, shoot it down and so forth? I'm actually surprised they haven't ever implemented those stuff I read before where they actually had drones flying with nets, for example, where they could catch them. I would imagine you could just do something like that in terms of controlling the area and all that. But either way, lots of countries trying to find ways to take drones down too. And I guess you could expect to see more of that tech and stuff implemented in just everyday situations, I suppose, like events. So as you know, there were the complaints on how the RCMP allegedly misused their drones, which resulted in the death of the ostrich. And now apparently what people are kind of up in arms about is how they're flying a ton of drones apparently during the nighttime. I would imagine they're flying around with things like thermal drones and all that, but it doesn't make you wonder what exactly they're doing, because the other claim is actually while those drones were flying during that time, things like the camera feeds and stuff, they got cut out, like in the farm, if that's true anyways. And that's a little suspicious, isn't it, in terms of a timing coincidence? So it makes you wonder in terms of using, let's just say, high-tech stuff and jamming devices, if they are actually doing that or if it's just a coincidence. But in general, actually, I guess one of the twists is it sounds like anyways from the response that the police are trying to, I guess, in many ways accommodate and cooperate with, let's just say, the farm owners and so forth, but they're basically getting, I guess, instructions per se from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency to do this or that. So it's kind of adding, I guess, a new dimension of the drama per se. You can actually hear them, I guess, talk about it and so forth.
And you just want to make sure they have lied to us, so that trust is really gone, that eroded trust. And we want to just have visuals on the animals. So we had a talk with the RCMP last night. They were wonderful, and they were going to put up a drone and do a count for us because they're here to keep the peace. And they thought, what a great way. Of course, we can go up there and we're going to count them for you. We'll get you a number because that puts you guys at ease, your minds at ease, while this is all going on and an interim stays in place. And today they, they were reprimanded for that.
We got big shit from the CFIA.
So let's finish it. This is the problem with Canadian Food Inspection Agency, is that excessive freedom, that no oversight, and they get to kind of make those rules as they go. And they got upset with the RCMP trying to do a very good thing for our family and just let us know where we were at.
Overall, it's really interesting, especially with the fact that it seems like anyways, a lot of people are flying their drones anyways to document the situation, even with the no fly zone rules and stuff in that particular area. Again, we don't know for sure whether or not they did that because they want to suppress people from filming the area or not, but it makes you wonder whether or not they should have that type of power and ability to actually stop people from just documenting the situation in general. Like I mentioned before, it's easy to say for the mass majority before, where if you read a story like that, people flying over a sporting event, it would be like, okay, yeah, whatever, it makes sense, ban this and that and so forth. But what happens if it comes down to a situation like this, where it really affects you in some way, and you are alleging, for example, there's some kind of no good or corruption going on, and they're stopping you from being able to fly your drone just to document stuff in that way? You have to think about everything in general. Not just one little buzzword in terms of, let's just say, a fear trigger, and then just say, okay, yep, it makes perfect sense. right. See you guys later.